What happens when one of television's boldest interviewers sits across from a guest expecting soft questions and royal treatment? You're about to find out, and trust me, this one gets explosive. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, should celebrities be held accountable when the tough questions start coming? The studio lights burned hot that evening, casting a sharp glow across the polished desk where Piers Morgan adjusted his tie. Calm, confident, ready. This was a man who had grilled presidents, prime ministers, and plenty of fragile egos. His producer had warned him. This one could get tricky. But that was exactly how Piers liked it. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying that signature authority. "Tonight we have a very special guest. Someone who's been making headlines around the world and has a lot to say about recent events. Please welcome Meghan Markle." The applause was polite, measured. Meghan walked onto the set, her smile picture-perfect, her posture flawless, the embodiment of polished poise. She took her seat with the air of someone expecting a comfortable, controlled conversation. "Meghan, thank you for joining us," Piers said, leaning forward. "You've spoken quite a lot lately about your experiences, and I think our viewers would appreciate some honest answers to some direct questions." Her smile faltered for a split second, barely noticeable, but not to Piers. "Of course," she replied smoothly. "I'm always happy to speak my truth." "Your truth," Piers echoed, raising an eyebrow. "That's an interesting phrase, but if you don't mind, I'm more interested in the truth, the actual facts." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop. Meghan shifted slightly, her composure unbroken. "My truth is the truth," she said evenly. "I've lived through these experiences." "Absolutely," Piers nodded. "And no one's questioning that. But when public statements don't line up with documented facts, well, that's where journalism comes in." Her jaw tightened. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," Piers replied, opening the folder in front of him with deliberate precision. "I'm asking direct questions. For instance, you've claimed your wedding happened days before the public ceremony. Yet the Archbishop of Canterbury himself has clarified that your so-called private garden ceremony never legally happened. Care to explain? That's a private matter," Meghan said quickly, her tone cooling. "It's not appropriate to discuss personal details like that." Piers let the silence linger. "But you discussed it publicly, Meghan, on international television before millions. You can't make public claims and then call them private when questioned." The room went still. This was no friendly chat. This was a clash. "I think you're being unnecessarily aggressive," she said finally, her smile now strained. "I came here for a conversation, not an interrogation." "Asking for factual accuracy isn't aggression," Piers replied calmly. "It's journalism. If you make statements that influence public perception, especially about others, they need to be true. Don't you agree?" Meghan clasped her hands, her knuckles whitening. "You're twisting my words." "I'm reading your words," Piers said, holding up a transcript. "You told the world you were married privately, days before the official ceremony. The Archbishop confirmed that wasn't a legal wedding. So again, can you explain the discrepancy?" The question hung heavy in the air. Her media polish was slipping, and for the first time that night, the balance of control was visibly shifting. "I think you're focusing on semantics," she said tightly. "The emotional truth matters more than legal technicalities." "Semantics?" Piers leaned back, half smiling. "Meghan, you told millions you had a secret wedding. That's not semantics. That's a statement of fact. And facts, unlike feelings, don't bend. The person who supposedly performed that ceremony says it didn't happen the way you described," Piers said, his tone steady but unyielding. "That's not semantics, Meghan. That's a contradiction. and contradictions deserve clarification. Her composure cracked. Barely, but enough for a veteran interviewer like Piers to notice. Her once effortless smile had tightened. Her posture stiffened. "I don't appreciate being called a liar on national television," she said coldly. "I haven't called you anything," Piers replied evenly. "I'm simply asking you to clarify statements you made publicly that don't appear to match the facts. If that feels unfair, perhaps you can help our viewers understand where the confusion lies." The tension in the studio was electric. What began as a celebrity interview was fast turning into a battle of credibility, and Meghan seemed increasingly unprepared for the scrutiny. "I think you're being deliberately obtuse," she snapped, her voice rising. "You know exactly what I meant." "Actually, I don't," Piers replied, calm as ever. "And neither do our viewers. That's why we're here, to get clarity on issues you've made public." Meghan abruptly pushed back her chair, half rising before sitting again, a flicker of frustration crossing her face. Off camera, her advisors exchanged uneasy glances. "I came here expecting a fair interview," she said sharply, "not an interrogation." "A fair interview includes fair questions," Piers answered. "And fair questions sometimes require uncomfortable answers. That's journalism, Meghan. Surely you understand that." The mood had shifted completely. The polite studio atmosphere was gone, replaced by a palpable sense of confrontation. Piers remained poised while Meghan's practiced composure was starting to crumble. "Let's move on," Piers said smoothly, glancing at his notes. "You've made some very serious allegations about racism within the royal family. These are extraordinary claims, with global repercussions. Can you provide any specific evidence to support them?" Her eyes flashed, a mix of anger and disbelief. "I lived through it, Piers. That should be evidence enough." "Personal experience is absolutely valid," he acknowledged. "But when you accuse one of the world's most scrutinized families of institutional racism, and those accusations damage Britain's reputation internationally, people naturally want more than just your word. Don't you think that's reasonable?" "Are you saying I'm lying about racism?" she shot back, her voice echoing across the studio. Several crew members froze mid-motion. "I'm asking for specifics," Piers said steadily. "You've made broad accusations but offered no concrete examples, no dates, no witnesses, no documentation. You mentioned conversations about your son's skin color but refused to name who said what or when. How can anyone properly address allegations that vague?" Meghan's hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together. "I protected them by not naming names. I could have, but I chose not to." "Protected them?" Piers leaned forward. "You accused them of racism on international television. You painted the entire royal institution as discriminatory. How exactly is that protection? I didn't name specific individuals," she countered, her voice tight. "But you smeared the entire family," Piers replied, not missing a beat. "You let speculation run wild. Millions now see the royals as racist, based solely on your unverified claims. Surely you can see how damaging that is." Her breathing quickened. The polished calm was gone, replaced by raw emotion. "I don't have to prove anything to you or anyone else. My lived experience is valid." "Of course it is," Piers said calmly, "but public accusations carry public consequences. Your words have impacted diplomatic relationships, public trust, and the lives of people who have served their country for decades. And yet, no one can respond properly because you've given no specifics. So now you're blaming me for people's reaction to racism," she snapped, her voice trembling. "I'm asking you to take responsibility," Piers replied, his tone firm but measured. "If someone treated you the way you've treated the royal family, with sweeping, damaging accusations and no evidence, would you call that fair?" "Without providing specifics or evidence," Piers continued, his tone unwavering, How would you feel if the same were said about you? Meghan stood up again, this time pacing behind her chair, her composure visibly unraveling. Camera operators adjusted swiftly to keep her in frame while, just offset, her team exchanged anxious glances. "This is exactly the kind of treatment that drove me away in the first place," she said, her voice cracking under strain. "You care more about protecting the institution than protecting me." "I care about the truth," Piers replied, calm and controlled. "And the truth is that you've made serious public accusations without offering the evidence to support them. That's not protecting anyone, Meghan. That's responsible journalism." "Responsible journalism?" Meghan laughed, a short, bitter sound that echoed awkwardly across the studio. "You're just another member of the British establishment trying to silence me." Piers paused, letting her words linger like smoke. Then, with measured precision, he replied, "Meghan, I've spent my career challenging the establishment, holding the powerful accountable, asking difficult questions no matter who they are. That's exactly what I'm doing now. By attacking a woman of color who's trying to speak her truth?" Meghan's voice wavered, emotion seeping through her practiced tone. "By asking a public figure who's made serious allegations to back them up with evidence," Piers countered. "Your race and gender don't exempt you from scrutiny when your claims affect millions. True equality means being held to the same standard as everyone else." The words hit her like a physical blow. Meghan froze mid-step, staring at him, speechless for a long moment. That's completely unfair," she managed at last. "You don't understand what it's like to be in my position." "You're absolutely right," Piers said gently. "I don't. But I do understand what it's like to be a journalist, and to have a responsibility to uncover the truth. And that's what our viewers deserve." Meghan returned to her seat, visibly shaken. The confident, polished woman who had walked onto the set was gone, replaced by someone struggling to hold herself together. "Let's talk about your relationship with your father," Piers said, glancing at his notes. "You've publicly distanced yourself from the man who raised you, paid for your education, and walked you down the aisle. Yet you've embraced a family you claim treated you poorly. Help us understand that choice." "My father betrayed me," Meghan shot back too quickly. "He sold stories to the press. He staged photos. He chose money over his daughter." "He made mistakes," Piers agreed evenly. "But according to several reports, he was also under tremendous media pressure, facing health issues, and trying to manage an impossible situation. Did you ever consider that he might have needed your support, rather than your silence?" Meghan's face flushed red. "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the full story." "Then tell me," Piers said quietly. "Help me understand how a man who sacrificed so much for your success became someone you could completely cut off." "He made his choices," she said, her tone icy, "and I made mine." "Even after his heart attack? Even when he was clearly struggling?" Piers pressed. "You chose to maintain ties with a father-in-law you barely knew, over the man who raised you?" The question landed hard. Meghan's composure fractured. Tears welled in her eyes, more from frustration than sorrow. "You're being cruel," she whispered. "I'm being honest," Piers replied softly, yet firmly. "And honesty can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary." The room was silent. The tension was suffocating. Everyone in the studio could feel that the interview had reached its breaking point. Meghan sat rigid, tears glistening beneath the studio lights, while Piers remained the picture of calm professionalism, the unflinching interviewer he was known to be. "Meghan," he said finally, his tone softening but his resolve intact. "I understand this is difficult, but these are questions millions are asking. When public figures make powerful statements, it's only fair that those statements are examined. Examined or attacked." Meghan shot back, her voice trembling. Because there's a difference, and you've crossed that line. I've asked for evidence to support serious allegations. Piers replied evenly. I've asked you to explain contradictions in your own words. I've asked about relationships you've publicly discussed elsewhere. Those aren't attacks, Meghan. That's accountability. That's journalism. She wiped her eyes, smearing the edges of her makeup. You're just like all the rest, she said bitterly. You can't stand that I spoke out, that I refused to play by your rules. Stay silent and just take it? Meghan shot back, voice trembling between anger and exhaustion. Actually, Piers said, leaning back with calm precision, I admire people who speak out. I've built my entire career doing exactly that, challenging power, refusing easy answers. But speaking out comes with responsibility. You have to defend your claims, back them with evidence, and face scrutiny. That's the price of having a platform. I don't need to defend my lived experience to you, or anyone. Meghan snapped, her voice rising to a near shout. Several crew members shifted nervously, glancing at one another as the tension in the room thickened. But you do need to defend public accusations that damage reputations, Piers countered firmly. You've accused people of racism without specifics, claimed you were denied help, though records suggest multiple offers were made. You've portrayed yourself as a victim while cutting off family who supported you. Those are public statements, Meghan. Statements with consequences. Meghan's chair scraped sharply as she stood. I'm done with this, she said. I won't sit here and be lectured by someone with an agenda. My only agenda, Piers replied, still seated, is the truth. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe ask yourself why. You're twisting everything I say, Meghan nearly screamed, her composure gone. You're taking my words out of context. You're protecting a racist institution. I'm asking for evidence, Piers said, voice low but ironclad. You call it racist? Fine. But where's the proof? Who said what, when? In what context? How can anyone address what you won't define? Meghan fumbled with the items beside her, her hands trembling. I don't have to prove anything to you. The fact that you're demanding proof says everything about the kind of man you are. The kind who believes in evidence-based reporting? Piers replied, eyebrow raised. Yes, that's exactly who I am. That's what journalism is. You're not a journalist, Meghan spat. You're a bully with a TV show. The words hit like a slap. Piers's gaze hardened, but his tone remained steady. I've interviewed terrorists, dictators, and world leaders. I've exposed corruption, challenged governments, and questioned those in power. If asking you for evidence makes me a bully, then I'm proud to be one. How dare you compare me to them? Meghan hissed. I didn't, Piers said calmly. But difficult questions come with serious interviews. You don't get special treatment just because the truth makes you uncomfortable. This interview is over, Meghan announced, tearing off her microphone. I won't be subjected to this. You're free to leave, Piers said, unmoving. But walking away doesn't make the questions disappear. It just makes it look like you can't answer them. Meghan froze mid-motion, Piers's words cutting through her anger. For a brief moment she seemed torn, then ripped the mic free, the sharp pop of feedback echoing through the studio. You'll regret this, she said coldly. People will see this for what it is, a powerful man silencing a woman speaking truth to power. They'll see a journalist asking fair questions, Piers replied evenly, and they'll see someone who walked away instead of answering them. Let the audience decide what that means. With that, Meghan grabbed her purse and stormed out, her team scrambling to follow. Piers adjusted his tie and turned calmly toward the camera. Well, he said, I think that speaks for itself. When public figures make serious allegations, they should be ready to defend them, with facts, not emotion or outrage. That's journalism. That's accountability. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady and final. "We ask the uncomfortable questions because the truth matters more than comfort. Always." The studio fell silent. A confrontation for the ages. Truth versus narrative. Evidence versus emotion. And when the dust settled, only one voice remained steady.